Hi everyone, today's video is going to be I guess a bit of masking and a way to create a scenery type card. I thought I'd just sort of walk you through what I'm doing here. I've used the Lawn Fawn rectangular dies, and I've used both sets, both the small and large set you can see on the left there are in the same package, and I've used the second one down, so essentially it's the largest of the small set, just to cut out a piece of white cardstock. I've then was planning out how and layering up how I wanted the stamps to sort of create that scene. So I've got the jar, I've got the beans in the jar, I've got the label on the jar, I've got the jar lid, you know, that sort of thing, just creating the whole image of what I want to have there. So now I'm just trying to decide which piece needs to be stamped first and masked, I can't say that word, first, so that it gives the illusion that it's in front of the thing that's behind it, if that makes sense. So here I'm stamping what will essentially be the label on the jar, but I need to stamp that first and then mask it off so that it appears when we stamp the next image over the top of that. It won't stamp over that label. It'll make sense in a minute when I'm actually stamping it. I'm using Lawn Fawn's How You Been stamp, and I was going to use one of the beans from the die set, but I decided not to do that in the end. But this also has great add-on stamp sets, and at the moment I can't get hold of the Halloween stuff, so you know, it's that time of year, guys. I love my Halloween. So I've got a few other Halloween stamps and dies that I've managed to get hold of, so I will do that in another little video, a little haul video as such. So here I've masked the yellow bit, is where I've masked off the what will be my label, and now I've got my beans. So where I've stamped the beans over the post-it note, which is what I've used, when I take that off, you're not going to see the beans, you're going to see the label instead, and that's kind of how masking works. You have to think about it a bit, unless you're clever enough, unlike me, where it takes a bit of thinking for me to work out which bit I need first. There I was just saying I didn't actually need to worry about about covering up the beans, because it's not actually going to affect the jar, so it's not going to make any difference. It's where things are going to overlap or be in front or behind of something else. That's where you want your that's where you need to think about your masking and how or where it's going to sit, and which layer you need to layer up to be able to create that illusion that something is behind something else. So which you'll see in a minute. I'm going to do the same thing here with the lid. I'm going to mask up and cut out the lid, so that it doesn't interfere with the jar itself. So I want the jar to look like, the lid to look like it's sitting against the jar. But in order to do that, I have to stamp the jar lid first, then mask it off, and then when I stamp my jar over the top, you'll see it will stamp over the mask, and when you take the mask off, you'll see that the label is in front and or on top of, and that the jar lid is also in front of the jar. I hope all of this makes some form of sense. You'll see what I mean. When I take the two masks off, it'll make more sense. But essentially, it's about creating whatever you want in the forefront. You need to stamp that first, mask it. So do you see how the jar lid is now in front of the jar, and how my label is actually on what looks like the outside of the jar? But we have to stamp that first in order to create that illusion. So it's a very cool technique, but like I say, it does take me a little while just to get it in my head as to which way around I need to do things. So apologies if this didn't make sense. I will keep making them because I do enjoy making these kinds of videos, so hopefully the more I make, the easier my explanations will be. So yeah, I'm just stamping some little faces. They come in the How You Been stamp set, and I thought it was kind of funny to have them walking off out the jar. Yeah, I'm silly like that. So yeah, that's what we got going on there. I also thought this little sentiment was quite sweet. Pardon the pun. It says, been meaning to say, and then you'll see that the label that I put on the sentiment, sorry, that I put on the jar itself says, you're sweet. And they're little beans, like jelly beans. That's what I was thinking. So yeah. Right, so here's where I think I started to speed things up a bit, because I thought you're not going to want to watch me, well, you might want to watch me colouring, but I thought you might want to see a sped up version of this. These are the Nouveau alcohol markers. They come in a set of 3, and the idea behind them is that they have 3 that coordinate and that you can use to blend to create that sort of ombre look, if you will, and like shadowing sort of thing. So I was just deciding which ones to use, and the yellows I couldn't get to work enough for a good like contrast between the light and the dark shade with the blended bit in the middle. So I'm just winging it like I do most things. And I realised there that I had those pens the wrong way around. They're all numbered so that you know in what order the shading works. And you'll see here I went with darkest and lightest, but obviously the lightest one is too light on the purples. So I changed back to the middle one and used those 2 together. I wanted quite a contrast, but like I say, on the yellow one, for some reason it just didn't seem to do that. And then in the oranges, and you'll see that in a minute, there's one of the orange shades seems to look quite yellow, so I'm not sure what's up with that, but it worked. I made it work. Yeah, so just figuring out which ones I want coloured in, what colour, so that I'm not sort of got the same colour on top of each other, although in the end that kind of happened anyway, so you'll see in a bit. So the one on the left of these oranges, or what I took as the lightest one, you'll see he looks very yellow. And yeah, I didn't like that, so I went back in with the middle one. And I quite like how that orange works. I like the contrast between the light and the dark on that orange, on those 2 shades of orange. It just, and it's even better in real life, but it just gave a lovely sort of, I don't know, the shading just worked really well. So just more colouring. I like watching people colour things in, especially when it's sort of sped up like this. It's very cool to watch something suddenly become this image that they've been creating, and suddenly there's this whole thing going on. It's like, whoa. It's not really whoa, but it just makes me happy watching people colour. I love doing it. I don't think I'm the only one who likes watching people colour. So and there's some crafters out there who are they're so talented, and I take so much from them, in learning how to do things and how I've learned to do things. And I think that's one of the things that you can keep doing, is just to keep practicing, and just keep trying different things. Right, so I think that's sort of my colouring done on the beans anyway. So I've used B00 here for my, it's a Copic marker. I can't remember the name of the colour, but it's just to give the illusion, it's like a really pale blue, and it's just to give it an illusion of that it's glass. So just going through with that, and then using the colourless Copic blender just to sort of drag that colour out so it doesn't look like there's a big blue line around the what would be the edge of the image. Just to sort of smooth the colour out, and also around the edges, especially near the beans, because I've used alcohol markers on the beans, and I was using an alcohol marker on the around the edges. You have to be a bit careful because they will react together because they're the same. They're made up of the same stuff. Component, that's not the right word, but you know what I mean. Same sort of ingredients. And then for the label, I used sandstone, which is, again, these are alcohol markers, these are pro markers, and the blender pen. And what I wanted to try and achieve was just a bit of a lighter area in the middle, so it gives the illusion that it's curved around the jar. It sort of worked. I have Ice Grey 1 and 2 here, pro markers, and these are for the lid. And again, I'm just using like as I did with the label, I'm just sort of using a bit of a flicking technique. Even though it's a bullet tip, I find it works okay. It was the first time I sort of tried it, but it seemed to work quite well. So things like that, just to practice, is learning different little techniques and things like that. It's quite good. It gives you a bit more scope in your colouring and what you do, and that's I knew what I was trying to say there. Oh, been a while since I've done a voiceover. Not that I've done many. I'm using the sand Copic marker here. Again, with all images like this, you kind of want to make sure that you ground the image, which means that you give it the illusion that it's not just floating in the middle of nowhere. So by the time you've finished, even if you don't colour the actual, like the top half of it, it will still give that illusion that it's sitting on something, that it's not just floating, I guess is the best way to say it. And I was trying to get clever with shadowing with the same colour marker, but I just can't do it, man. I tried to do it in another card a couple of weeks ago, and I got to practice, man. Definitely got to practice that. So I think I gave up in the end. On the jar lid, I also wanted to say that, like with the label, I tried to give it that illusion by having the lighter area in the middle, so it gives the illusion that it's either shiny or it's round, that there's like some sort of depth to it. Here I'm just showing that you could use that B00 to outline the image if you wanted to. It does give a nice look on some images. I chose not to do it on this one. This is a piece of what is this, Daffodil Delight Stampin' Up cardstock, and I had some issues here with the folding for some reason, but I cut it at 5.5 by 8.5 and then scored it at 4.25. Standard American A2 size card. I love this size card. I find it a UK A6. It's a similar sort of size, but it's I don't know, I just don't like it. So it's the wrong size for me. The piece, the sort of purpley piece, is Rich Razzleberry. Say that 3 times fast. And it's also Stampin' Up cardstock, and that measures 5.25 by 4. So that's a standard layer that you could use on an A2 size card. And then obviously we've got the panel that we use the dies for to cut out. So that's got some lovely stitching detail around the outside, which I always find is really nice. It's like you've done something but you haven't really done anything because you've just die cut the piece out. So it just gives it an extra little bit of something. So I'm just sticking this flat to this piece of the card. And I think I decided, to pop the whole panel up on some 3D foam. You don't have to do this. You can just stick it flat to the card and still make a great card. I just, for whatever reason, decided that they needed some dimension on it, because I feel like everything has to have dimension and bling and sparkle and whatever else I can find to stick to it, without overdoing it, of course. So I decided to pop the whole thing up on the foam tape. It's a nice it's a different look, but don't be afraid to experiment with that sort of thing, making sure the card's the right way up, because again, I have done that. I have stuck things upside down. So yes, and it's almost finished, but I always think, did you see the tapping of the finger? That's me going, well, I need to add something. So I'm using the Crafter's Companion clear sparkle something pen, Spectrum Noir pen, and I was quite quick with it, because even though we coloured these guys in with alcohol inks, the black ink that was used was a Memento, which is a water-based ink. So if you add any moisture to it, it will start to, with the exception of like alcohol ink, because that dries really quickly, it can start to bleed. So you don't want to leave it on there too long. And then after I'd sparkled up the beans, I thought they needed some crystal glaze, which is a Nouveau product, Tonic Studios product. I also decided to use some more tonic, so I grabbed a this is the glow, it's a glow in the dark, as you saw there. This is the Nouveau Glow Drops in Banana Split, and just so you know, the ones, to tell the difference, the ones that have the black diamante thing on the top, on the lid, are the glow in the dark ones. The next colour is a jewel drop called Pale Periwinkle, and it dries translucent. So like a couple of cards ago, it had the grey mist, I think it was called, and that was also translucent. So I thought I'd just add a couple of those there just to give it something else, and the background was a bit too plain, and just fixing up my little dot there as well. Trying to show you the 3D again. They are very 3D, they're very, very cool. If you have not got any, you need to get them, they're amazing. So that is it, guys. One super easy, little bit of thinking, masking card. Hope you liked it. Be sure to click the subscribe button. There's a few more videos here for you to watch and learn more, and I hope I see you in the next one. See you later, guys. Bye.